And I just got off the phone with my mother, listening, and I can't say to her, I got to go back to work, so she understands that this is work. I'm doing my own business, and her fears, her fear of there's no paycheck coming in, there's no man taking care of me. I can't give her the opportunity. I have to cut her off real quick when she goes into, that safety zone. My mother, as delightful and wonderful and upbeat as she is, she's very negative, and she's got a fear of failure. Yeah. And that's not a gift that I want from her. And that's taken me a long time. I'm 39 years old, and I still deal with that every single day, breaking myself out of that and knowing what I'm capable of. If I can throw a party and 1,500 people show up, I think I got something good.
Mm-hmm. And
but
then I had to learn, girl, I had those stuff and nobody showed up, and I still had to realize I had something good.
Right. But, you still have that voice. You still got mama sometimes telling you, because she's mama. And you look at her as, that's mama. She's the woman that gave me life. And you look at her, like you said, as that goddess. And my mom doesn't understand that she's a goddess. She has no idea, because she's never been that goddess.
Yeah, but look at you, though. You're aware of all of this stuff, and she's still alive, so you got the opportunity to drop seeds into her consciousness to help her shift stuff, and it might be hard for her because, especially if she hasn't been open, like I was talking about the mothers that you look at them as a goddess because, even if they've dogged you out, you still have this divine image of them because you really haven't broken through to the core of who she really is, because you're caught up in the illusion of her being divine and being the goddess. And if automatically, whenever I see a woman abuse her daughter, I know she does not know she's divine. She's really sick and she's twisted because that is sacred. Anything that comes out of your womb is sacred, and you don't abuse it, and you don't let anybody else abuse it. I remember when my son was little, and I would deliberately test men because I would have men around him, never leave him alone with them because I knew that I had been molested as a little girl and abused. So I was not going to I would never be able to live with that happening to my child. So I was always real protective of him, and everywhere I went, I would take him unless I was working where I could not take him to work. Other than that, he was on my hip. And I would see how certain men would respond to him. And I would watch him. I was just like, if the man was coming over, because I really didn't let every man I met come to my house because I didn't want to know where I stay. I didn't want to be around my son. If I let him see him, I would just put him in the room, and I wouldn't say, go say hello, go give him a hug, go shake his hand, because I said, no, I'm going to let this child intuitively tell me some shit I might not see, because a lot of times women won't be so desperate, or they be liking a motherfucker and they want so bad that you don't really see him, because when we get into idolizing and worshiping people, you only see what you want to believe that you goddamn see. Right. But them children, many times, they see shit that you don't even know is there, and you need to watch how your children respond to men. If that child is real standoffish, and the nicer the grown-up is, the more standoffish the child is, that means that child is reading something that the adult is not saying, and they're using the niceness in front of the mama to try to trick the mama into feeling comfortable and seduce her to leaving the child alone with the man. So if I sense any type of hostility, or they say, oh, your little boy too spoiled, he need to grow up, he don't need to be up under you, you need to send him to a babysitter, you need to send him off somewhere, you need to whip him, I knew then that wasn't the one, because I had made up my mind I was never going to let no man whip my son for me. I was not going to have no designated man I screw to beat my son for me, or to be able to say anything to him or mistreat him any kind of way. And when parents do that, in the child's mind, a lot of time, it does fuck with your self-esteem. It damages you, and you question the bond you thought you had with your mother.
Yeah. And the reality is there's so many women that don't ever see that. Because children are so much more pure and so much more open and so much more intuitive, because they haven't had that life of being told, don't think like that, or you don't see that a certain way, because they've got that purity, they've got that innocence. They still have what they were born with, that intuition that they don't question yet, because they don't know that they shouldn't question it.
They ask you everything. They will say any and everything. Girl, I used to be so embarrassed because my child would just say any and every day.
But they've got that innocence and purity, and they can sense what we can't, because we tell ourselves what we think the reality is, and children sense it. We're using our brains and they're using their hearts.
Well, see, I was always sensing, but I didn't trust it. I was taught not to trust what I sensed and called dumb and stupid and always put down by my mother. So it really made me question. I just felt like I was just this dumb idiot and didn't really have nothing to contribute to life or to the world. And I just went through my life just beating myself up because I had been beat up my whole life. That's all I knew. So it made me feel like that was all I was worth. And then I kept meeting people that would tell me that. And I kept meeting men that would do that and then would rationalize it by saying there was something less than about me and something better than with another woman to justify mistreating me, but then putting another woman on a pedestal. And that's why I'm doing these shows and willing to talk about my experiences and how I had to learn to heal myself, to encourage especially black women to have this conversation with themselves, because a lot of times your mother is not going to have that conversation with you. Your mother's not going to tell you, look, I'm sorry, I mistreated you, I abandoned you, I allowed you to be raped and molested, and I know that when you told me I didn't do anything about it, or if you finally tell them, a lot of times women don't tell that they're abused because they're afraid to tell them. And when they finally tell them, the mother might not know what to do, so she is so shocked and she's so embarrassed and she's so ashamed because she didn't do her job. Many times she'll turn that shit on the daughter and say, okay, well, if my boyfriend, girl, you know what, I know about some sick shit like this personally, and I still get messages like this. Well, the mother will be going with a man, and the man will be screwing the mama and the daughter. The mama will know about the shit, and instead of turning on the man, have jumped on the daughter, put the daughter out the house, and will never speak to the daughter again. And then you will see the mother, an old-ass woman, competing with her daughter for a damn man that she stayed in the house with, and it becomes the vagina competition, damn pussy fight and pussy competition. You were fighting with your daughter because you sick. And a lot of times the daughters are put out in the cold, we abandon, don't have nobody, and they're blaming themselves, and they are lonely, and they're just wandering in the wilderness, and vultures are loving it. Pimps, players, liars,
right there,
waiting for your daughters. You put them out there, and a woman is going to be fucked up for a minute until she really wake up and get herself together, or somebody comes to help her mentally, psychologically, and emotionally rationalize that shit and fix herself. When your mama do stuff like that to you, you are real, real unstable for a long time. No man, nobody else can't really balance that for you because of the mother's role in that shit and because you came out of her guts. You came out of her very, very, the core of her being, and we don't always consciously know that connection is that deep. That's why I'm letting the women know. Sometimes we can't shake it. It's women 50 and 60 years old never get over this. They never get the connection. They don't know how this ties into their self-esteem and their issues, and they beat themselves up. But they don't get that. Even if your mother was the most vicious and ruthless mother, sometimes we will still love that abusive mother because we don't realize how deep that rabbit hole really goes. Her vagina, her pussy goes deeper than the back of her pussy into the cervix through her uterus and connected to her fallopian tubes. It goes into many other dimensions, like I was talking about the spiritual anatomy that we aren't even talking about. What were you saying?
Right. I said it goes into her soul. We come from her soul. We are the seed. And we regardless of, like my mother is 71 years old, and I try and plant seeds every day, every time I talk to her. And I know from looking at her and listening to what her friends tell me and what my relatives tell me, that there are things that are working because I am just a naturally, I have a brightness. And it's a brightness that I got from her. There's a lot that I've gotten from her. But because I left, and I did not let that sink into me too deeply, I was able to free myself. But I don't know that she'll ever be free. But it is up to me to break the pattern. I will never give that to a child. I will never. If the patterns are not broken in our communities, if you can't count on your mother saying, I'm sorry, and helping you heal, you go get that healing yourself. You go do whatever it takes to find that healing, to heal yourself.